Here's a tip for you. There's a podcast out there with fans waiting to be your next customer. They tune in every week, they trust the host, and that host wants to talk about brands like yours in their own words to their audience. The problem is, you just haven't been introduced yet. We're Acast, where that introduction happens. As the world's largest podcast marketplace, we let you browse shows, see who's listening, and book host-read sponsorships or run your own ads, all from one platform. Transparent pricing, real-time data, complete control. Start advertising on podcasts by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast. My name is Paul Barnett, and here on the podcast, we believe there is no algorithm for leadership, and so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find a few ideas to help us all be better leaders. Why sports coaches? Because we think they have the stoicism and selflessness which embodies the idea of a great leader in today's society. Our great coach on this episode is Brian Goorjian. Brian is a basketball coach. He was born in California but came to Australia in the late 70s. In 1984, he was the inaugural captain of the Melbourne Tigers in the NBL and then transitioned into coaching after retirement. In a career that has spanned over 20 years in Australia's National Basketball League, he's won 6 championships, 2 with the Southeast Melbourne Magic, 3 with the Sydney Kings, and 1 with the South Dragons. He has also spent time coaching in China, Japan, and the Philippines. He's also had 2 stints leading the Australian national team known as the Boomers, and famously led them to a bronze medal, or as he calls it, rose gold, at the Tokyo Olympics. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge, and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now please enjoy our interview with Brian Goorjian.
You're listening to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Well, Brian Goorjian, good afternoon and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Looking forward to it.
I'm very happy to get you on your day off. I know it's been a hectic season for you with the Kings, and I'm glad you've found a few minutes to carve out some space to talk leadership with us. Brian, can I start by just name-checking a couple of the big-name coaches you've been involved with? You came to Australia with Lindsay Gaze. You've worked with Michael Dunlap, a great coach who we've also interviewed on the show, Ken Watson, and there's Brian Curl in there as well. And I'm sure there's tons of other great coaches from many different sports that you've interacted with as well. But just an easy one to get us going. What is it you think the great coaches do differently that sets them apart?
Well, I mean, when you mention the Australian, because I think that coming from America and coming to Australia, and the key figure for me, the guy that picked me up at the airport, is probably the greatest coach in Australians. I had no idea getting off the plane, but in Australian history, not only playing, coaching, international, was Lindsay Gaze. And Lindsay Gaze was the one that brought me over here. And through Lindsay Gaze, meeting Brian Curl, Barry Barnes, Adrian Hurley, there was a group there. But the one I knew and around what with the day-to-day that I think represents and answers your question the best, because there was kind of a common theme with that. Coming from America, they were all paid. It was a full-time job, high high, it was almost like a business. And then when I walked into the stadium at Albert Park, Lindsey picked me up, and he looked like I was, t-shirt, shorts, really casual. I remember stepping in the car. This is the head coach. It was like an old beat up Ford. Drive to Albert Park where the basketball court is, and I'd never stepped in a court where there's 9 basketball courts. And I'm looking at where, like I was never seen anything like it. And then I ended up living in the house that was hooked on to the basketball court, and got up. I remember the first basketball session. He said, just get changed and we'll play some 3-on-3. And I'm thinking, well, who's going to play? And, like he played. And to me at that time, it's like Andrew and Lindsey looked 60 when they were 40, and they still, Lindsey at 75 looked the exact same. Andrew looks like he did right now when he played. So I was just taken away by his ability on the court for his age. And then after we finished, he ran the canteen. His wife ran the canteen. His wife made the uniforms. Some relationship, brother or father, was in front where the cars parked, taking the coins for you parking the car. And then I remember watching games that night. We were having team practice the next morning, and I come in, and it was fairly early in the morning, and Lindsey was on the sideline, and these kids were young, and he's coaching these kids. And then after we got finished, he's mopping the floor before we come on the court. And then he would coach us and then also play with us. Okay, now we're playing 5-on-5. We're going to scrimmage. So an aspect of it that I was not used to. You talk about a love of the game. All those guys had a incredible passion for the game, and love of the game. And then, the other thing that really stood with me, and I go to Lindsey, and I'm just, again, Lindsey as his incredible knowledge as far as all aspects of life, the government, world politics, different languages, different countries, and then his thirst to evolve as a coach. So you take Australian rules football here, which was, there's an environment to learn in. The basketball, Lindsey was ahead of everybody else. So I'm looking, and I remember, because I'm a man now. I'm 24 years old. I'm becoming a man, so I'm not a kid. I'm watching him and evaluating, because my thought process was, when I finished school, that I was going to go into be a high school coach and a PE teacher, that kind of thing. And I got an offer to play. So I'm going to play longer, but I knew eventually I'm going to become a coach. And so I'm thinking along those lines when I'm with a guy. Now here I am in Australia, thinking that I'm not going to be in an environment that I could learn from. And here's a guy that's highly intelligent, teaching me things in our sport that I was never taught in America. And then gravitating and learning and growing through contacts in America, bringing systems, bringing style of play, bringing, schemes offensively and defensively from people he was contacting in America, and studying and bringing it across to here, which was unheard of at the time. And then what we would do, a lot of the other teams would take aspects of what he did and learn through Lindsey. So that the love of the game, the constant thirst to learn, and then I just thought the other thing of no ego. absolutely. I came from an environment where, the coach, call me Mr. such and such, it's like, do exactly what I say, keep your mouth shut. Where with Lindsay, it was like sharing, communicating, care. How's your apartment? Is your car, okay? Are you eating good? When's your wife coming? There was a concern for you and a caring for you. And I learned these, and I take, pride in things that I picked up from him outside of the game. Like when I lost, when I played for him, when I lost, it touched it really hurt me to see him lose. And I hadn't really experienced that when I was playing in college, when I was playing a little bit after college. I never looked at the guy in that manner, where I hated to see, I hate to lose, but I also hated to see Lindsay lose. So he generated a way. He was very confident in his craft. He was constantly improving. He had a love of the game, and he somehow, in the way he handled people, developed an environment where you loved him. And these things, a lot of times, they're not talked about, but they're things that I took from him, to where I went when I started in coaching.
Well, let's jump forward to that starting in coaching, because I understand it was also Lindsay that helped you get your first job in coaching, which was with Ballarat. Looking back, what do you remember about that experience now?
One is when I finished playing, it was certain things where you're fortunate, and I knew I was coming to the end of the plane. Do I go back to America and go to where I just talked about, go to a high school, start as the high school basketball coach and get back to what my degree was? Or do I stay and try to get something going in Australia? And I loved Australia. I did not want to go home. But when I was playing, I didn't, where do I go with this? Because I'm assistant coaching jobs in the leagues that we were playing in. There was no head jobs, and there was no paying assistant position. And all of a sudden they started a second division and brought a bunch of country teams in. And I was in, it was summer. We just finished the season, and I was weighing out what I was going to do. And I got a phone call from Lindsay saying, I've coached you for this amount of time. I see potential in you. And there's an opportunity in Ballarat, and it's a really well-run organization. The guys are really professional up there, and I think you'd really enjoy it and do a good job for them. So it ended up being the best thing that I ever did. And the Ballarat was run unbelievably professional, and I got an opportunity to coach young guys at the very start, and with no expectation, and coming in and try to put a program together that was competitive with the Melbourne's, Nuttawadings, starting from ground level. So it was in Mike Dunlap. There's a lot of things that come into play, some great stories, but it's once I got that position, I flew to the United States and did like a 2-week course. And then my dad was the head coach of Loyola University, and Mike Dunlap was an assistant and just got done playing for my father. And that's where Mike and I met each other.
One of the most remarkable stats from your career is that from 1990 to 2009, your teams finished no worse than the semi-finals. The same thing then happens when you go off and get involved with teams in China and the Philippines. It's a really great serial success that you've had. But can I spin it around a bit, Brian, and just ask you, when ex-players come to you for advice when they're starting in their first head coach role, they're starting in their first leadership role with a new club, what do you tell them?
Well, I got a great story that kind of tells my philosophy when I started in it. When I went to this course, and I did it, basically when I finished with it, the at that time it was, when you go back there, Aussies like camper vans, like to fish. It's a great life over there. They do their work and they enjoy their enjoyment time, outwork them. That was, if they get up at 8:00, you get up at 7. If they train 3 times a week, you train 5. So I got off, and got off the plane, drove up to Ballarat and put a program together, a day-to-day that nobody was doing. Mornings, these kids will all live local on their bikes, come in, do workouts, everybody was in the second division, was training twice a week and playing on the weekends. We were training every day. And, so that, I'll never forget just the story to finish that one, because it started, and I say this to the coaches, work ethic it's come through in this so many times. China, when I started in it, you putting in the work is a real important aspect of it. And this guy came and visited me, and after I started, and he was following the team, and came up to Ballarat and spent some time with me. And then I remember I was so worn out when this guy was ready to leave. I mean, when I get up, he was already up. When I go to the practice session, he's there. When I finished, he's up at night in my ear. He was there for a week. I was driving him back from Ballarat to the airport, and real loud, hey, when I see this, you need more pressure on the ball. You got it. That voice, that energy in the car, in your house at night. He's in the car and we're driving, and I'll never forget, I'm going down Kingsway, and I pull into the petrol station, and this is in the 70s, early 80s. And I get out of the petrol station, and we're back in the car going to the airport. And he looks at me and he goes, if I lived in Australia, I'd be a millionaire. And I look at him and I go, well, I've been here for, 15 years. I don't have a dime. Talk to me about it. What do you got for me? He said, I'd open up a service station next to this dude. And I'm looking at him thinking, because I'm so used to Australia. He goes, imagine, he's got fudge on his fingers. He's got cinnamon on his shirt. He's smoking. He's sitting on his big butt. It has the energy of little Abner. He goes, imagine if you had a place across the street and you had guys decked out in their stuff. You get off, you pull up and they put air in your tires. They say, how are you? Are you having a good day? They take your credit card. They bring it back, put it in there and shake your hand. He said, that's how you can win here. So that philosophy towards the game was a big one. And I always talk about that first, because that was the first thing that was hit with me. And I tie it over when I went to China, and I'm with Yao Ming, and I'm with Gigi Wang, and I'm with all these guys with the national team. They don't, speak English, and you've got a bunch of guys there. How do you get their respect when you can't communicate with them? So that what I have to do there is a lot of times how I answer your question. It's like, I can't say, how's your wife? I can't communicate. So you got these guys, work ethic. They come in the gym, you're there. They leave the gym, you're there. The video, I'd come in and I'd sit down with Gigi and say, hey man, like this move here, and show cut-ups that I'd taken at practice and showed it to them. And if you this little counter move to what you're doing here, because what you realize is that everyone wants to get better. And now those guys, he works hard and he's competent. So the second aspect I always say, to young ones, you got to get competent in craft. players know if you're faking it. So you need to have a strong work ethic. You need to get confident in your craft. How do you get confident in your craft? And you and I talked beforehand. I'm still working on that with being around, Eddie Jones, being around Ange, being around Luke Beveridge, being about Neil Craig, Mike Dunlap, having a circle of influence around you that are knowledgeable, that you can grow from and continue to improve and evolve. And I'm taking that. You're 72 years old, and you're saying, if I don't grow with the game, if I don't improve my skills, I'm going to be left behind. So your circle of influence, the people around you, and then the third, the being confident in your craft, work ethic, and then a real important aspect, I think, now of coaching, and I think of what I'm looking for as an assistant. A lot of guys have been up, and I'm not taking away from that, but the people, the interaction part is a big part to this now, about leadership, about confidence, about your team. I think is having a coach, or you being able, can you come into a locker room and relay it? Can you sit on the baseline when a guy's playing and pull him over to the side and get him to do what you want to do? Can you call out the best player and sit down with him and communicate? A lot of coaches, I feel like in this, that they hide behind the computer. They're always, they're sitting there, they're doing this, and you got a forest fire going on here. And you go, hey man, this guy needs your voice, needs your time, needs your personal touch. And that aspect to a coach, and especially in today, I look at how it was 20 years ago and today, the people that come to me now, if you said, God, he's really smart, he's really elite, he's really good on the scout, he's really good at picking up detail but he struggles on the baseline. He struggles, on the individual skill work, that aspect. So, there's 3 or 4 things that I think are really important in becoming a leader and becoming a coach.
Can I take it beyond the technical skills now? So we've talked about, you've set up, you came here as a player, you went into your first job, you've got this great work ethic, good technical skills. You coach Australia once, you come back, and leading into Athens, you talked about it before the Rose Gold, but leading into Athens, there was lots of articles I read where you talked about, and you used this word time and time again, the culture of the green and gold, and you wanted to improve it and develop it. Now, it's such a strange word. It means so many different things. I understand that. But Brian, could you tell us how you went about building that culture back up again that ultimately led to the success that we saw in Athens?
Yeah. In a really good, probably a really important time in my life in coaching. And if you go back, and this is lessons learned now, being an international coach for a long period of time. I'd only coached domestically, and a huge mistake made in this country is international basketball works in 4-year cycles, and the last thing you want when you talk about green and gold and culture is everyone retiring at the same time. So you need guys spitting out, guys coming in to replace the leaders and young ones, and it works like a conveyor belt to keep the culture that it is, whether going. So they're touching each other. So what you had after Sydney Olympics was everyone stayed and wanted to play in those Olympics, and they didn't call out the ones that needed to move on. They let them hang on and play that extra Olympics. So after that Olympics was finished, everyone retired at the same time. Our household names, Shane Hill, Andrew Gaze, Vlaho, Bradkey, all of them gone at that period of time. Shane ended up coming back to help, but he retired at that time. And then we went to qualify for the Worlds, and we lost to New Zealand. which was unheard of. And Phil Smythe was let go, and they brought me in. And so when I started in it, that's where I kept trying to, what you need to do to the media, to everybody, is that team finished fourth. We're not a continuation of that. This thing, you've got to develop a culture and a style of play, because we're starting from zero. So the guys that we had coming into this thing have never been a boomer, never been an international player, have no idea what the green and gold is. And now I'm new. So there was there was a culture there that Andrew Gaze, Vlahoff, Bradkey had, but it doesn't exist anymore because nobody's touched it. Nobody's felt it. So when I started in it, it was like, we've got to find a way to be competitive with a bunch of guys that have never played internationally. So it started with things that all involved the non-controllables, giving the guy a towel when he comes out of the game, high-fiving, huddles, the live bench, all the loose balls. Well, when you talk about that to me is standards and culture. So when we put the thing together, when we started with the Boomers, it was, okay, we're going to work on conditioning. We got to be a really well-conditioned team. We've got to compete. We've got to be good defensively, and we've got to develop a strong culture. And Russia had just got in Lithuania and all that went on there. And you go to Athens and you see Argentina, Lithuania, all these teams, the cultures they got to build that and be elite in that area is really, and you find to be the best in the world at any aspect is incredibly difficult. And one of the ones that I picked with this, in order for us down the road to be any good in this and compete with the top countries, it's got to be strong there. So where do you go? How do you do this? It's not my expertise. So I've always felt like Australian rules sport coming from America is, if you take the NBA, if we get along, great. If we don't, get your 15 rebounds and 15 points and do your job. Piss off, where Australian sport, when you look at Australian rules football, it's like if you don't have great teamship, and I look at that time or period, the Bloods with the Sydney Swans and what started there. If you don't have that and everyone's looking at it because it's so competitive and you have to have an edge, you can't win. So I went to Australian rules football where this piece was being worked on a daily basis if you're going to win a championship. And I pulled a guy out of that called Ray McLean. And Ray McLean ran a company called Leading Teams. And when we went into camp and prepared for whatever we did, I always brought Ray in. And at the end of every session at night, we would sit down and we started building this culture. And the culture, I mean, we could talk and have a program on this. But at that time, a lot of the sport was the coach. It was my way or the highway. And what this became was the values, the standards were set by the players. And you had a captains that ran it. And your job as the coach was to evaluate it. And so the word empowerment became a very, very, very powerful point in it. And what you learn, or what I learned from it, is it's much more powerful if it's player driven than coach driven. So the players set the standards, the players, and my job was to evaluate. And also, the goal of this thing was to form a leadership team underneath it where these guys start developing the skills, and everybody, like learning how to pass, shoot, dribble, everybody becomes able to lead, and everybody becomes part of the culture. So it was unique. And if you take the story to Andrew Bogut was the first one, which led to Joe Ingles and Patty Mills in Beijing. 4 years later, we got whopped in Athens, which everybody knew. But New Zealand was one of the top teams in the world, and we beat New Zealand and qualified, which was huge. They finished 5th in the World Cup, and everybody was talking about New Zealand. And we played a really, really strong New Zealand team to qualify and also beat them at those Athens Olympics, along with Angola, and was competitive with Puerto Rico, competitive with Lithuania, but not under the bar. Then when we went to Beijing, took a huge step forward and introduced Patty Mills and Joe Ingles to this, and you had Bogut, and we lost to Team USA in the quarterfinals, and I moved away from it. Went into COVID, came back, long story short, 12 years later, and I walk into the Rose Gold, which ended up getting the medal 3 months before those games, and had a camp that was volunteer in Huntington Beach. And I wasn't allowed or part of it. I was just an observer of it, and it was run by the players. And I came in there and sat down there and was absolutely gobsmacked by where that leadership, where that culture had gone from what I was a part of. And the first thing I saw that touched me was Tybal, Josh Green, Josh Giddey, Duop, all those guys coming in, and Baines, Joe, Patty, grabbing them, touching them, communicating with them, lunches, things at night. But the first thing I remember just sitting on the side, and Patty with Matisse explaining what a boomer was. This is what a boomer is. And when this is what we're doing now, and when we leave, which is going to be a short period of time, you've got to take this to another level. And I'm just thinking to myself, what I went through leading into Athens, what has transpired now has saved 6 years of work. Patty Mills, Joe Ingles, Baines are touching Matisse Tybal, Josh Green, Josh Giddey, touching these guys before they're on their way out. So this thing continues. And we develop, they develop a theme of that kind of sometimes gets misconstrued, I think, that, you're gold vibes. And the gold vibes I love, because it's not, we're going to get a gold medal. It's everything we do is going to be gold standard. And if we do everything at a gold standard, we're going to get a gold medal. And that meant what color, what shoes you wore, how you wore your socks, the locker room, the food we ate, the bus, the music. Everything was pristine. Everything was perfect. And constant evaluations on that. And I kind of sat, like, that first week was beautiful for me, because it's right there for me to see, and my voice isn't there. So when I walked away from that, leading into that Olympics, I just, short period of time, clarity, simple, how I use my voice and make sure I have big energy. And I didn't use my voice, and virtually I didn't raise it until we lost to Team USA, and leading into the bronze medal game.
That's the sound of the Big Bang of country music. It was 1927, Bristol, Tennessee. The electric microphone meant producers could visit Appalachia and record folk songs for the first time. What they captured launched a genre. This is one of many sounds in Tennessee with a story to tell. To hear them in person, plan your trip at tnvacation.com. Tennessee sounds perfect.
You've got social dialed in. Search is doing its thing. So why do your marketing results look the same as 6 months ago? That's because you're fishing in the same pond as everyone else. Podcast listeners are a different audience entirely. More engaged, harder to reach through traditional channels, and ready to act when someone they trust makes a recommendation. We're Acast, and we put them right in front of you. Browse thousands of the world's leading podcasts, book host reads or run your own ads, and track every conversion in real time. Same skills you already have, brand new results. Acast. Acast.com/advertise.
Brian, it's a great story. I appreciate you sharing it with me. I'd love to ask you a little bit, so much more follow-up, but I want to circle back to something, because you, in that description, you sound like you've evolved as a coach. You're almost, empowering people, making sure that the team is preparing itself for the future that's going to thrive. When we started this interview, you talked about Lindsay Gaze and how much he cared. But somewhere in there, there's this line between caring for someone and demanding of them before you can even get to this point where you see the empowerment take hold. I wanted to ask you what you found about that line between caring and demanding, and what perhaps advice you've got for others on finding the balance and getting it right when it comes to that.
Well, the other aspect that we haven't discussed, it's always a big part of this, the winnings and the picking. So, when you're with the boomers, or when I select the team. So my job, I feel like, is when you talk about, and it's the same thing now with the Sydney King, I'm not for everybody. I select these guys, I bring them in, and where my mindset is now is my job, or where I put my energy, is helping them become better at their craft. And if they become better at their craft, there's going to be that love there. And there's going to, all these things are going to fall in place. This guy really cares. This guy is and again, maybe it's from Mike Dunlap, who, and going way back to the American thing, the thing that you were always taught on my way through my high school coaching, whatever. I've never coached a pro. I've been doing this for 30 years, 35 years. Nobody's made the NBA. But when you go into the classroom and you're a part of my program, you're going to kick everyone's ass in there. And anything they go and try to do in life, if you apply the principles that you are getting from this program, you're going to, there's nobody that can, you put your mind at. It doesn't have to be basketball. It can be to be a doctor. It can be to be a teacher. It can be a policeman. You apply this to anything. It's about greatness. And that is how I think now when I'm with my team. I'm not, I'm putting all my energy into making them better at their craft. And in turn, I feel like it's making them a better person. It's and I get, because I get now, I'm at this age where I got people that come back to me that I've coached that are in their 60s, that are in their 50s. And what I'm just talking about now really resonates. It's like, it's not that they remember being a part of the team, being what you did for me, a hug and a kiss on the neck. You made me fall in love with the game. My kids play the game. I took what you did with me. And I had a guy just recently stage 4 cancer. And you've got 4 months to live. He's on year 6. And he called me up on the day of the Rose Gold. He's in bed having a huge surgery. And we're playing for Rose Gold that day. And he's in the hospital bed having the major. And basically the message is, I got through your practice sessions. I was in your program. He goes, I'm going to kick this thing's ass and you're going to win today. So, and I get this, a lot now where, that there's guys that are in your program and now they're lawyers, they're doctors, their kids play basketball, and you had an influence on them. They're not pros. They're not making money out of basketball anymore. They didn't set themselves up through basketball, but what you did for them, and in that being a part of the team, has made them good at and become good at what they do, a good husband, a good father, all of those things. And that started with me very early. So I guess, and I'm on you. People say that a lot of things that you're good at, that you're not good at. One of the strengths that always comes back about me, you're really good at putting things in compartments, like in a box. I never worry about the office. I never, and a lot of coaches get this thing bothers them or this thing, and they get sidetracked. I can, I feel like it when every time I step out of the gym, I'm going to get my head cut off. So I try to this thing with players now. Here's, give them everything you got. Make sure that work ethic's strong. Make sure you've gotten better and you're competent at what you do, and don't waste their time. And if you, and I told you that the big aspect of this and is going to China. And I spent 12 years in China and I couldn't communicate. And these values that we're talking about, and I'm still, guys that I coach there, I'm still getting asked, to come back when a job opens up here. Coach, can I come and play for you? No, you can't play as a foreigner here. And you couldn't communicate. So, and also so many things when you say you're different now than you were then. A lot of it's to do with being in China. So example being, I talk a lot. I'm American. When I'm on the court, I communicate a lot. When I came back here, Coach, you're so much better on the floor. What do you mean? And they go, you don't talk so much. And now I'm thinking about it. When I was in China, I had to deal and work through an interpreter to work through. So my practices had much better flow. And I used a word, passing lane, driving lane, instead of a long. And I thought about it and go, God, I'm carrying that over to this. And the guys really like it. And that's a little example. But again, through that process, evolution in the area that we're talking about.
I want to talk to you about that because you talked about empowerment before, but when I go to the basketball, I see the coach on the sideline calling plays. I see them motioning for the player to come over. I'm interested in basketball, but I would not call myself, a deep fan. Sometimes I find that distracting, and I wonder where this balance is, between empowering but leaving the decision making to the people out on the floor. Is that something that's changed since you got home from China?
Yeah. And, there's this that you're talking about. And it's interesting right now with my team. And I when I came back, I went to I don't have to talk about my team, but I went to Wollongong, straight back. They finished last place. And I go to Wollongong and I get with it for a while and go, this thing doesn't have leadership. I'm going to have to be the leader. I'm going to lead this. It's going to be my voice. They're not ready for this. And I don't have any time because the process we're talking about, I take you put the values up on the board. An example of something you would do early in the piece when you're building this culture is, here's our values, stand you up in front, and each table talks about you according to the values. You drink too much, you're still overweight, you're not locked in the morning sessions, you're in the afternoon. When you come in, you're not blah, 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 blah. Now, if you haven't done a ton of work leading into that, that player will never talk to that player again. So you can't just dive in. It's got to be a process in building this culture. So by the time I got to the end of year 2, I didn't have captains the first year. I had 2 captains the second year. And I started doing things like before the game, you're not going to hear I just go into my room and they would prepare the team to play. When they came out, that they're bringing the energy, they're bringing, the thing that's required as your home base to be competitive. They were in charge of that. Now moving towards what you're talking about now is plays, schemes, offensively and defensively. It's different than football. The coach is heavily involved in that. And you get feedback about how you're going to do things from the group, and I always say to them on this scheme, if there's something in this that I'm doing that you're uncomfortable with, and there was a little tweak here or there, and it would help you, please communicate. But when we use the scheme, which scheme we use, at what time, that's all stuff that it comes from the coach. So when you're watching a game and it's Australian rules football, they're up in a windowed box up there. We're right on the floor. There's 5 guys in your T-shirts, and you're evaluating every possession up and back. Now there's got to be some flow to it, but you can change things as the event's going on. And that's my expertise. So, we set the table of the boundaries that we're going to play in and the schemes that we have. And I involve the captains in that and discuss things, and we practice. But when we come down to style of play and we've got it down, when we switch, when we rotate, those are my calls and my feel on, we need a timeout. They're tired. The other team's getting tired. And I've got a deeper bench. I'm not going to call a timeout. I'm going to move these guys in. When I move these guys in, I got to change the scheme. Now, that's all stuff that comes from me, and that's my competence and my expertise. And that's part of a coach's job in the game that I play, that I coach.
Business is booming, but you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think unpaid bills were just part of it. Ugh. But batch payments? Wow. Automated accounts payable? Even better. All in one place. That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No bills in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search Xero for your free trial. Conditions apply.
That feeling when you're trying to build your credit, and it's like over and over again. Good news. Chase Credit Journey can help you with a personalized score improvement plan provided by Experian. So when you still need that credit built, you have the guidance you need. You can even get a Chase Secure Banking account with no monthly service fee if you're 17 to 24 years old. Hallelujah.
This tool is for education purposes and doesn't guarantee you'll reach your credit score goal. The score you receive uses Vantage Score 3.0 model and may not be the model used by lenders. Member FDIC.
Many of the people I've interviewed border on obsession. I think great coaches, there's an obsession about winning, team performance, culture, chemistry that can really drive them. I think it's the same in the corporate world. I think people can get addicted to their jobs. It gives you a feeling of, you get endorphins from the success, from the interactions with people. But it sounds like you found a way to bring intensity and then, as you say, compartmentalize it and renew your energy. Are there any routines you found that are better than others when it comes to that?
Going back to, putting things in compartments, I feel like myself, if I'm not obsessed, I can't win. If I'm going to be in this thing, I've got to be obsessed, but I can't bring them into it. And even my staff sometimes, like today, I got a day off before I saw you. I've made 2 really important phone calls on setting up practice from tomorrow overseas because I got a week to prepare. And then I've been on the video of the game for 3 hours. Just so I'm and I'm not asking anything of my assistants. My players are off, have a nice cup of coffee, dive in the ocean, get away from it, refresh. But I'm in this box right now, this in driving myself until the season finishes. But when I say putting things in compartments, that's for me. For my team, there's got to be balance, and I got to make sure that in a big part of this is one of the things that was said in this: cut your practice from 75 minutes to 40 minutes. These guys now, it's this stage of the season, and time and wasting time and do things in mind where there's no contact and it's really slow motion and you're touching and surprise them, keep them off. So my point being is constantly with me is I'm in this compartment, but when I'm looking at the whole group, and I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I've got to make sure I've got a team that comes, that they're getting all these things that we talked about, but they're coming in and they're not dreading it. It's when I played for Lindsey Gaze, I use the word love of the game. And you start to sense, hey, they're tired, they're worn, they're fried. And usually as a coach, when they're like that, you want more. If we did a little bit of this, if we added this, if we did this, it'd make a difference. And I'm saying to the assistants, we need to cut it down, pour a glass of water on it. They're fried. And that kind of feel goes back to what I'm talking to you earlier about. I know when you talk, it kind of bounces around, but certain these things that we bring up fall into compartments that we discussed prior. And that's that piece that isn't on the computer. It's like I think, you look at guys sometimes the week finishes and it's this time when it gets nasty right now and you're coming down the back end, they look at you and they go, he gets it. He gets it. That's again, and I can't even remember the question, but
no, we were talking about obsession. I know that you have so much energy. I've seen footage. I remember seeing footage of you, must have been 20 years ago, and they measured your heart rate during a game and they showed how it peaked and troughed. And I know you bring that energy. I guess I always find, if you work for a manager or you work for a CEO or you become that person that's working 7 days a week, sending emails at all hours and stuff, there's a danger that people can copy that behavior. And finding a spam breaker so that doesn't happen, I think, is also a leadership responsibility.
So, I guess when you say the energy and all that, I guess when I'm talking, I've put, it used to be all, me on the floor in total command, like it's my army and I'm on, and it's all me. And if you came to my practice, a lot of times, the ball's over here and I'm standing in the corner, just looking at the weak side, seeing things and letting my assistant run this end and the other one run this end. And then when they meet in the huddle, the captain's taking each team. You've got, Cooks, you've got Blue. I would never do that before. The energy would be just so, and my voice, like I said, it's down, but now I'm putting my energy on, when the practice finishes, getting the videotape, making point, and then making those calls that we talked about. So today, being truthful, I called Mike Dunlap first thing. We still, here's what went on in the game. Here's what I'm seeing on the tape. I got a week to prepare. What do you think? And the game plan, as opposed to how it was, like I said, 10 years ago before China, would be me, where a lot of this, when we get to it, I'll have the coaches, you've got 6 guys down here, you've got 6 guys over here. So again, my energy was put in the conversation with Mike, was put in the video session, and maybe a cup of coffee with the captain, as opposed to my energy being what me on the basketball court with the guys. There's, and that's that putting things in compartments, and there's a lot more compartments now, and there's a lot more empowerment that's being involved in the whole process.
Well, my hour's almost up. It's your day off, and I'm not going to go overtime because I'm sure you need a little bit of a rest or to dive in the ocean, as you said.
I love your questions.
You said earlier, Ryan, you said, my job is to help the players fall in love with the game. And you told me some stories about how they have come to you and said, my kids play now and they've fallen in love with the game. And I'd like to go a little bit below that if I could. And just to finish, I'd like to ask you, what beyond that love of the game is the legacy that you hope you've left for the people that you've coached?
Ooh. A positive influence on their lives. I mean, it's so much more than the basketball, and so much more than the basketball. That when I use this quite a bit with the team, but in my hallway, I've got a picture of every team I've ever coached, and you walk down that hallway, and you turn and you look at a photo, and you see that guy's face. Or you got your grandson and you're walking down and he points and you go, well, that's Neil. And Neil was, and then you start, he's a doctor now. He was a great, blah, 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 and for me, it's the same thing. I always think, they're going to have the team picture on the wall. They'll have their sons and they'll point to the coach. And that's the essence of the man. That's the essence of, what a coach is what is going to come out in that conversation. And the answer to your question is, man, he made me better. He was a good man. He was it's not, we won all our games. He knew the X's and O's. It's our whole thing is about relationships. And you want to be respected, and you get respect by making a person a better man. And I would say with coaches or whatever, when you're recruiting, meet the mom and dad, meet the dad, have a beer with the dad. Oh, what's so important about that? The fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And it's not, but such a high percentage of that is. And then, when I recruit, a lot of times when I recruit these Americans, it's the Duke, Mike Krzyzewski, you get a guy out of there, that's come out of there. It's the things that we talked about, the essence of the man. So, I get what we're talking about now, like I said to you so many times now. Last one maybe for you. I'm in the Gold Coast. I come back from Manila, and now I come back from the Olympics, and I'm at the Gold Coast. I get off the plane, boom, I'm in the Gold Coast, and it's the preseason blitz. We finish the blitz, and then I'm going to go to Perth. I'm back in Australia, and I'm sitting down having a beer. The thing's finished with a couple of buddies, and I'm off to Perth the next morning. And a guy walks up and taps me, and I look up at him, and he goes, "Do you know me?" And I go, "No, I don't know you, mate." Right? He goes, "You coached me at St. James." And I look at him and I go, that's 1977, 78, 79, right? So he goes, "I fell in love with basketball because of you." And he goes, "I'm 62 years old and I still play." And he opens up his phone, and there's a picture of me. I'm 24 at the time. I'm 72 now. I'm 24. I'm standing up, and they're holding the banner. And he's holding the banner. He was my captain. He was 12 years old, 13 years old. And then he goes, "My sons play. I still play." And he goes, "You changed my life." And then as I'm standing up, shaking his hand, he kisses me on the neck and said, "I love you, coach." And that, I'm seeing so many on the questions that you're talking about. It becomes and I talk about it, like being a part of a team, being a coach, that is what it's about. And when I'm with my team, and I guess the advantage of being older is the understanding of this so much more, because now it's coming back to me in spades. I've got guys in their 60s, guys in their 50s that have played for you. And you look back and go, that's what it's about. And I have that rapport with Lindsay. The first guy I called after we won that medal was Lindsay Gaze, and there was tears. And I played with Andrew my last year, and his broadcast was it was renowned from the heart. And that's what the answer to your question is probably the most important question of the whole thing, because it's now I get to experience it all the time, and it continues to drive me about how fortunate I am to be involved in these young guys' lives, and my experience can help them become better players and better men.
And that is why I think great coaches are the best leaders I've ever met. Brian, masterclass of an interview, a real treat for me to connect with you. I've been watching you, I think, since I was knee-high to a grasshopper growing up in Melbourne. And I look forward to coming out and seeing more of those Kings games and watching the team continue to evolve. And incidentally, Illawarra having a great year after you set them up last year. So thank you for your time today, and I wish you all the best for the years ahead.
And those questions, those questions were great, man. No, seriously, I do this a bit. You were right. I hope I was okay, but really enjoyed the questions. Really got the mind. Sometimes you come off these and it's, it comes out of your mouth again, and it gives you energy. But right on point. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. You have been listening to the great coach, Brian Goorjian. I hope you enjoyed Brian's story and found a couple of ideas that you can bring back to your own team for discussion. When I was listening back, editing the interview, some of the things that stayed with me afterwards were how team culture is much more powerful if it's player versus coach driven. The story he shared about rebuilding the Boomers culture and how this ultimately led to the country's first Olympic medal in men's basketball. And the importance of being competent in your craft, and the role that the circle of influence that he's set up around himself plays in that. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like at Swimming South Africa, who after listening to our interview with Rocco Merring said, take a moment to tune in to an incredible interview with Coach Rocco Merring. Hear his insights, experiences and expertise as he shares his passion for the sport. You won't want to miss this. Thanks at Swimming South Africa. We love the interaction and messages that we get from people around the world who listen. And so if you have any feedback or comments, or know a great coach that we should interview, then please let us know. And of course, if they're positive comments, then why not let a couple of friends know as well too. All the details on how to connect with us are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.
Business is booming, but you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think spreadsheets were just part of it. Ugh. But real-time cash flow? Wow. Invoices that chase themselves? Even better. Books that automate? That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No spreadsheet in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search XERO for your free trial. Conditions apply.
That feeling when you're trying to build your credit, and it's like over and over again. Good news. Chase Credit Journey can help you with a personalized score improvement plan provided by Experian. So when you still need that credit built, you have the guidance you need. You can even get a Chase Secure Banking account with no monthly service fee if you're 17 to 24 years old. Hallelujah.
This tool is for education purposes and doesn't guarantee you'll reach your credit score goal. The score you receive uses Vantage Score 3.0 model and may not be the model used by lenders. Member FDIC.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears, and when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.